Hi, good evening. Welcome to everyone. Thank you for being here on the Saturday for the event from Chennai chapter. I know that there is a pandemic issues. Everybody, please hope everybody stay safe and be safe and get your knowledge enriched through our free webinar organized by IMA. Really, IMA is doing a lot of good job for its students and other professionals to get enrich their knowledge by giving a lot of free webinars as well as the CPE. I once again welcome all of you to the Chennai chapter event. We will get into that. Siddhi, next slide. Hi. My name is Ganapati Subramanian. I am the president of Chennai chapter. I'm having more than 30 years of experience in various levels, including CFO as for about 20 years in the areas of hospitality, FMCG, and manufacturing sector. I'm also a certified trainer, and I'm going to be the moderator for this particular webinar today. Once again, all of you, please be attentive to the webinar and get benefited. And I would like to talk about some of the housekeeping. See, whenever you are going to get into the webinar, you will be automatically muted on entry. And there are questions, there are poll questions are going to be there. If you want to ask questions, you can definitely raise your hand by clicking next to your name. And there will be a Q&A session at the end of this webinar. Definitely all your Q&A questions will be answered there. So if anybody is using your mobile for attending this particular seminar, you may not be able to attend the poll question directly. But however, what I suggest, you can answer those questions in the Q&A session. And to get the full CPE credit, you have to attend the full presentation and answer all the polling questions, right? And definitely there will be a evaluation form at the end of this session. It is optional. If you want, you can fill it, which is going to benefit our community for the future events. Now, we are going today, the webinar from Chennai chapter is the neuroscience of conversation, which is very much needed for the accountants like us, where we are not like a marketing guys, where we really require how to converse with our co-workers or even the co-clients. So this is a very good session. And today's presenter is Siddhi JP. She is a MA Applied Linguistics and having a PG diploma in educational leadership. She is also a certified coach from the International Coaching Federation. Siddhi is an academic background in linguistics and educational leadership and has lived and worked 3 different continents. She has a different continent so that she has all the different cultural she has seen. So she is able to handle in a different culture area also. She has taken these routes, moved into the areas of personal development of herself and those she comes into contact with. She is intensely interested in supporting these.
Did we lose sound? Yes, I think we did. I just
okay. Do you want to just start with your presentation?
Sure, I'll do that. Okay, a very, very good morning, good evening, and good afternoon to all of you. I believe there are attendees from across the world, and I welcome all of you today. This is a strange time that we are all gathering here today and meeting virtually. First of all, I'd like to check, can you all hear me?
I can hear you very well.
Great, fantastic. Thank you, Ori. Okay, so very strange time that we're all meeting. And the important thing about the time right now is for many of us, we have come to a moment when we're looking at, our lives, we're looking at what we're doing, how we are living, right? And very importantly, we're looking at relationships because for those of us in a lockdown type of situation, we are in a, in a lockdown state with people whom we have to meet and see every day and spend lots of time with. For those from India, this has gone on for about two months now, and we're looking at more time in lockdown. And so what happens is this really brings into focus the conversational value that we have with people around us, the relationships that we have with them. There are people who may be newly married. There are people who may be married with children. There are people who may be living alone and needing to converse with their friends and relatives over in a virtual setting. All of this really, tells us a lot about who we are and how our relationships are. So today we're going to spend some time just looking at, what the relationship between our conversations and the brain is. What exactly is this relationship? How does the brain function? And what those conversations are that can lead us to better trust. So at this point, I'm going to ask you all to just type into the chat box your name, your location, and one expectation from this session. Just one thing that you thought, I think I want to learn this. Hi, Rashid. Welcome. Hi, Krishnamurti. Welcome. Confident, okay? So Khalid says he wants to be confident. Welcome, thank you. Welcome, Deepak. Welcome, Abdul. How to develop interpersonal skills, okay? Amin, welcome. Welcome, Mirza from Hyderabad. Nina, welcome. How to handle difficult conversations. Okay, how to better navigate conversations. Not to hesitate. All right, welcome, Ori, yes. To know what neuroscience is all about, right? Okay. Learn to understand the mind, how to handle stress, okay, handle conversations and not to hesitate. New to this topic, fantastic. Handling difficult conversations, how to be calm, yep. How to maintain relationships. Wow, I love the comments coming up, the topics that people are talking about. Valuable connections, yes, really important right now. How to handle communications with each other. Mohammed, you're not sure? Great. We'll explore. You'll learn something new, hopefully. Thank you, Naren. New to this topic. All right. Okay. Self-control. Nice. Okay. Khalida, thank you. How to convince my managers to promote me. I love the specificity of that. Thank you. How to handle difficult situations and react. Yes. Scientific approach. Nice. Lovely. Really, really nice to see all of you joining us here today. Hoping to update communication. Yep. Leadership. Yes, absolutely. This is very, very connected to leadership. Nice. And how to start difficult conversations with people who are reluctant. Okay. Mean, thank you for joining us. How to improve communication skills. Okay. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for typing your names in and your topics. I think Most of the expectations that you have, we will be covering here today. Just in case there is something that you have, a question that you have, something that you want to talk about or ask about, and that's not covered in the session content, please hold on to it and ask me that at the end, and I'm really happy to have a conversation. And if we don't have enough time, I'm happy to have a conversation even after the session. Yeah, we are about conversations after all. Okay, hi Bala, thank you. Why do we not get positive vibes at all times? Beautiful, spot on question. Okay, how to convince our customers? Nice. Okay, how to react to negative comments? I love this. Absolutely. How to handle relationships? Okay, great, beautiful. Moving on. I'm going to ask Ganapati to launch the poll question 1. What, in your opinion, makes a conversation enjoyable and satisfying? Is it the data presented? Is it the status of the person? C, the topic? Or D, the trust I have on the other person?
A lot of answers are coming. The poll is going to end in another 15 seconds. Oh, nice answers. Lot of feedbacks. More than 200 feedbacks has come out of 248 attendees. Very nice. Yeah. The poll is going to go over now. Yeah, it's over. Okay. So almost everyone has answered. It's very nice. Okay. So let's see what is the result.
Okay. That's beautiful.
Yeah. See, and you see that lot of answers were there. Nearly 80 out of the 200 is the D. D has got the maximum numbers. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is very nice to be there. So how do you think, Siddhi, about the answers here?
I think this is beautiful, Ganapati, because it clearly shows that people are tuned into what it is that we like. We know when we have a conversation with someone, what feels good is the trust. I'm not surprised at the data presented, at 41 people choosing that, because I think considering the background of the people, yes, data would be important. Topic, absolutely, topic is important. Very often what can happen is that our cognitive brain can take over and the topic sounds really interesting and we go along with it. And we're talking about conversations where at times we may not completely be emotionally invested. All right, lovely. This is a great start and a great point to start looking at what this session is going to cover. So in this session, we will be talking a little bit about the working of the brain. What exactly, the brain is complex. So I'm going to talk about, a really, really tiny part of the brain, just a piece of what happens, a bit of what happens when we have conversations, right? This is not a session where we will be covering everything about the brain. We're also going to be identifying the connection between the brain and different types of conversations that we have. And finally, I'm going to spend time talking about ways in which you can have trust-building conversations. So a lot of what came up, expectations from you, from all of you. As you can see very clearly, these are some of the things that had come up. If it's not covered in the session, as I mentioned before, feel free to ask me later, right? Okay, this is the brain. Just to give you, a bit of an example, if you hold your fist up like this is essentially the size of your brain, and this is what your brain looks like. So you have the brain here, and this part is the brain stem, okay? I have a situation for you. Imagine you're walking down an empty street at night, and the street lights are out, and you suddenly realize that you're being followed by someone, and you have the sense that you're all alone. The person is kind of shady looking, possibly wearing a hoodie. You can't see the person's face, and they're walking really fast, and this person is gaining on you. You're only able to walk a certain speed, and this person is gaining on you. Type into the chat box, what do you think you will feel, and what will you do? two questions here. Just one word is fine. What will you feel and what will you do? Okay, fear, nervous, confront that man. Okay. Okay, I see fight or flight mode. Yes. You'll try to walk faster. You're scared, you'll probably run. Okay. Share location. All right, that's smart. Worried, will slow down and try. Run, baby, run. Keep praying. Okay. Tingling in the stomach. Yes. Scary. Yep. Okay. You'll walk faster. Scared. Okay. If you can see, you know, the chat boxes is almost, I would say 80 to, no, more than that. About 90% of people are talking about nervousness and fear, right? And there's a tingling in the stomach, and there's a lot of physical symptoms as well coming up. Yeah. Scared, run quickly, run away, confront the person. That's lovely. I'll start dancing to confuse him. Okay. Start feeling insecure and behaving confident and strong. Okay. Adrenaline is at a high. Absolutely. Yes, Pratima. Thank you. Okay. So, spot on. Absolutely right. You are in a situation where you don't know what's happening, right? And imagine if we were to flip this and I were to say the person catches up with you and you know, taps you on your back and says, hey, how are you? I haven't seen you in so long. And this is a friend from a long time ago. Immediately, what would happen? Our emotions would change. You know, suddenly we would just feel a lot lighter, all of that, right? So what's actually happening here? What's happening is your skin starts feeling pale. You have flushed skin. Your heart starts beating really fast, and you know, your pupils are dilated. You start trembling. Somebody said, I have a tingling in my stomach. Absolutely. The stomach starts feeling really weird. You might have a pounding in your head starts hurting, and there's a tremendous amount of stress that's being built up. And if you look at the responses, apart from some of those, you know, outliers who said, I'll start dancing, and then one person said, I'll share my location, most people said that I would run away, and some people said that I would stand there and fight. So essentially, you have responses in two different categories. And this is called the fight or flight response. Pratima, I'm not sure who, but someone already mentioned that in the chat box. Yes, that's a fight or flight response. This is something that happens automatically, right? It's something that happens in any situation where we feel threatened. Essentially, it's fight or flight. It can also be freeze. You just freeze there in that moment. You don't know what to do. Sometimes it can also be something called appease, right? Where you're trying to please the other person by doing whatever the other person wants you to do. So these are essentially the ways in which the brain responds. Now, let's take a closer look at which part of the brain is actually responsible for doing this. And you'll be really surprised to know that it's a really tiny part of the brain. So if you look at the brain over here, you have the brain stem, and this is a part that's really deep inside. It resides somewhere here. It's a tiny little part called the amygdala, right? The amygdala is the culprit for all of these feelings that you have. Your legs, you know, shivering, your calf muscles feeling tight, your thighs are feeling, you start sweating, your thighs are feeling tight, your stomach is rumbling, all kinds of things. That tiny little amygdala is responsible for all of this, right? So where is the amygdala and what does it do? The amygdala lies deep within the temporal lobe, this part right here, which I pointed out earlier. And it doesn't work all alone. It's a part of an entire system called the limbic system, right? And what is the amygdala responsible for? The amygdala is responsible for automatic responses. It responds really quickly. Essentially, the job of the amygdala is to protect you, is to keep you safe. Think back to a time when, you know, we were hunters and gatherers, and we had to go out and hunt. When you were out in the forest and you saw something, you saw some stripes possibly. Very quickly, you had to determine what to do to protect yourself. because our prime goal at that time was to ensure that we do not die. That is it. That's all it was. I don't want to die. I want to get my food and I don't want to die. So the amygdala was really important at that time because all it did was it would look at something or someone and tell you whether you need to run away or whether if you fight this thing or this person, you would be successful or not. So its job was to evaluate all of that. So what the amygdala does is it basically builds the body up in that minute. It prepares the body in order to either run or fight. So when you want to run, your muscles are cold. When you need to run, your muscles need to warm up. When you need to run, your heart needs to start pumping faster. So all the amygdala is doing is it's shutting down all other parts of the brain and it's jumping into high gear and it's saying, stop everybody, I'm taking over. This is the most important thing right now and we are going to run, okay? So it provides autonomic responses that are associated with fear. Amygdala also is responsible for those very, very basic emotional responses. It also processes and consolidates memory of a certain type. Very simple. When you look at stripes, you're in the forest, thousands, millions of years ago, you're in the forest, you're looking at stripes, okay? What the amygdala does is it very quickly brings back a memory, a pattern of all the things that you've seen that are stripy, and that could be, either safe or not safe. So it could be a tiger, it could be a snake, it could be, just grass. It brings back a pattern with all those memories in it. And then it takes a decision, oh no, I gotta run because last time this wasn't good for me, right? So that's what it does. And at that moment, it secretes certain hormones that take over, all right? So what it's essentially doing is this creates a cycle. You have the brain, which goes into, the amygdala goes into fight or flight. The symptoms of that are either worry or fear. Oh my God, what's going to happen to me? I need to run. That's the mindset that kicks in. Your adrenaline glands kick in, and so it releases adrenaline and it releases cortisol, which are the hormones that allow you to run and that allow you to, get into high gear, so to speak. It's that stress hormone. So when these hormones are released, what essentially happens is the amygdala is hijacking your brain. It's telling the rest of your brain to shut down, and it's saying, stop. We need to be safe. So it makes the brain hyper alert at that time, which is how, warriors are able to fight and know where different arrows are coming from. This is, I'm again going back to when we were in the forests. Your pupils start dilating to take in more information, right? Because that's what you need to survive. Your bronchi in your lungs dilate to take in more oxygen. Let's start getting ready to run, or, even if you have to fight, you need more oxygen. Your breathing starts accelerating. Your heart rate and your blood pressure go up. The blood flow to the muscle increases. The glucose to the muscle increases because that is what is required at that time. That's food for the muscle. And your digestion immediately slows down. So that's where the shutdown is happening. It's shutting down other parts and it's saying all forces are needed here, right? That's essentially what an amygdala hijack is. And the amygdala does this really, really well, okay? All right, so at this point, I'm going to launch poll question 2. Ganapati, let's launch poll question 2. Which one of these is not a function of the amygdala? Shami, great question. We will come back to that. Ganapati, can you?
Yeah, connecting the previous negative experiences. B, feeling empathy. C, protecting self. D, warming up muscles to run. So give your answer. Poll is on. Hope everybody is able to view the poll and they're answering it. Nice, very nice. More than 250 answers have been recorded. Yeah, thank you. The poll is going to be end within 10 seconds. Yeah, nice answers. 250 attendees are answering the questions. Those who are not able to see this, please type it in the chat box. Yeah. Yeah. The poll is completed. Let's see the answers now. Yes. So the result seems to be, when you see this, the feeling empathy is the maximum number of participants as selected that.
Fantastic.
Siddiq, about that.
Absolutely fantastic. Spot on. Just go back to the example that I had given earlier, which is, you're walking on the road and somebody's following you and how you feel. What's happening is because there's an amygdala hijack at that time, the last thing you're going to feel is, oh, possibly that person is also just walking home in a hurry to get home, because then that person also may be scared. That's pretty much the last. I'm going to, okay, great. Yeah, so that is really the last response that comes to your mind. That's because the amygdala has hijacked your mind, right? So yes, it's spot on. Feeling empathy is not something that the amygdala does. It connects previous negative experiences, to form a pattern that tells you, should I run or should I fight? Amygdala's job is to protect the self, and what it does is it warms up the muscles to run. So yeah, absolutely right. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ganapati. Okay, moving on. I'm going to ask you to look at the picture. I'm going to have 3 pictures up. Just look at the picture and just focus on the picture. If you have any cell phones or anything nearby, I'm going to request you to put that away and just focus on the picture. Okay, so question for you. How do you feel right now? What is it that you're feeling right now? Type that into the chat box. Yeah, makes you happy, ecstatic, caring, loved. Serenity, reassuring, blissful, cheerful, comforting, grateful, bond, calming, safe. Oh, what beautiful words I'm getting here. You're feeling comfort, cheerful, fascinated, committed, blissful. That word has come up quite a few times. Calm, content, lovely. Lovely. So what happened? What happened? I showed you 3 pictures, and the words that are coming up now are survived Corona. Lovely. Yes. All my wishes to all of you for that. Yeah. Adorable, protected. You're feeling happy. Yes. And at this moment, I'm going to ask you to, really go deeper into your body and look at what's happening to your body. Feel what's happening, to your shoulders. Just sense what is happening. When you just go down into your body, yes, you'll be relaxed. Absolutely. You'll feel that, there's a sense of like the muscles are looser and you're more relaxed. So what did I do over here? What happened over here? What exactly did I do? So essentially what I did was I kind of manipulated all of you a little bit. I made your brain release a chemical called oxytocin, okay? This particular hormone is also called the love chemical, essentially because, and no points for guessing why, when you're in love, oxytocin is released. When a mother gives birth, when a woman gives birth to a baby and looks at the baby for the first time, oxytocin is released, right? For the mother to start producing milk, oxytocin is released. For the mother to go into labor, oxytocin is released. When the father or the parent looks at the child for the first time, and they look at the child and you see something, oh, that's so cute, and the sense that you get inside you of softness, oxytocin is released. When you think about someone you love, oxytocin is released. For those of you from cultures where you have pets, dogs, and you like dogs, when you look at the picture of a puppy, oxytocin is released. When you look at nature, when you look at greenery and you look at, expanse, oxytocin is released. And what's happening when I asked you to go down into your body, everybody said that, they said you feel very relaxed. You feel loose, loosening of muscles. There's a reflection of positive feelings. What is this oxytocin doing? This oxytocin is slowing down your heart rate. This oxytocin is making you feel good. You're feeling relaxed. And it is in moments when oxytocin is released that your trust level increases, right? Your bonding increases. In fact, many of the people had used this word bond. What happened there? You saw three pictures, two of complete strangers and one of nature, and suddenly all of these beautiful, positive words are coming up, right? That's because this chemical does that to you. This hormone does that to you. What it also does is it also increases your social memory. For those of you who are travelers over here, you'll find that you have memories of, travels that you may have undertaken many years ago, and you might have had a small interaction. Oh, when I was walking in that city and I got lost and I stopped at a cafe and there was this really nice old man sitting over there. I asked him for directions and he walked with me and he showed me the way to get back to the main road. It's a small little interaction, but that's something that stays in your mind. And that's because you felt good at that time and that went into your long-term memory. That's social memory. So feeling connected to people, having memories of people helping you or being nice to you, all of this is thanks to oxytocin. Yep, it reminds you of your memories. Yes, absolutely, Krishna. Thank you. Okay, so this is what oxytocin does to you, right? Now, we've talked about the amygdala, and I've also talked about a hormone called the oxytocin, all right? So I have a question for you. How did civilization get built if we were constantly in this mode of, fight or flight, and we looked at each other either as a friend or a foe. Okay, either I'm safe with this person or I'm not safe with this person, which is operating at a very, very basic level. So operating at the survival level, right? How did we end up building civilizations? Because to build a civilization, you need a lot more. You need groups of people to come together. To build a city, to build a country, to build international organizations, you need a lot more. So what happened over there? Let's go back to, a little bit on the brain here. So if you look at this, this is an image of a man from the Neanderthal man, essentially, right? If you look at the shape of the forehead, you'll notice that there is a sloping that happens over there, right? And you'll notice this is extremely pronounced in the imaging that they have done from the skeletons and from the remains that they have of that age, from the work that has gone into it. So what happened after that? What happened essentially after that was the brain slowly built a completely new section. And this part of the brain is called the prefrontal cortex, all right? The prefrontal cortex is the part of the brain that is essentially responsible for us connecting. It's responsible for how civilization got built. Let's look at what the prefrontal cortex does, and hopefully we'll understand that a bit better. So prefrontal cortex is also called the executive brain. It performs executive functions. The 9 functions of the prefrontal cortex are, the first one is empathy. So putting yourself in someone else's shoes, being able to see someone else's perspective, being able to understand, hypothetically, this could have happened. They may be feeling this. These kind of statements are all, statements that come from the prefrontal cortex. Response flexibility, being able to change our responses. Okay, until now, I have always responded in a particular way to this. Whenever I see stripes, I have run away. Okay, but the first time I say, hey, wait, I know I had 2 bad experiences. It turned out to be a tiger, but let me see what it is this time. Maybe it's something else. That's response flexibility. We are able to flex or change the way we are responding, and the prefrontal cortex helps us do that. Emotional regulation. Being able to regulate our own emotions. I'm feeling sad. Okay, what do I think I need to do to feel better? Possibly if I go and meet my best friend and have, a meal with that best friend, I'll feel better, right? That's something that the prefrontal cortex does. Morality. I can do this, but I don't think I should. That's the prefrontal cortex. That's how civilizations got built. Yeah, I can do this to you, but I'm choosing not to. Choice, right? Intuition. So based on just a sense of what it could be, right? Attuned communication. So communication that is refined, that takes the other person into consideration. This is prefrontal cortex, right? And fear modulation. Very, very important, because the prefrontal cortex can override the fear that you're feeling. It can actually, through your body regulation, through your emotional regulation, it can bring into the body and the mind changes that allow the fear to be modulated. So that rather than the fear controlling you, you start building resources to control that fear. All right. So the prefrontal cortex is right here, right in front, and it has the possibility of overriding the limbic brain. Okay. Limbic brain, as I mentioned before, is essentially the amygdala is a part of the limbic brain, and it's responsible for your fight, flight, freeze, appease, stress response. The amygdala is entirely concerned with, am I safe? Do people want me? And the amygdala is where your basic emotions live, right? So that's the prefrontal cortex, and the prefrontal cortex is singularly responsible for the development of civilizations. And this is where I know in the chat earlier when I'd asked for what do you want, one expectation from this session, somebody had mentioned, I'm not sure, I don't remember the name, I'm sorry, they'd mentioned leadership communication. The reason the prefrontal cortex is called the executive brain is because it performs executive functions. So what it's doing is, it is like an executive that is able to connect with people, that is able to, suppress its amygdala, have better communication, regulate its emotions, find common purpose. Absolutely, Shamik. Thank you. Yes, that's what the prefrontal cortex does, right? Okay. We're now at poll question 3. Which one of these is a function of the prefrontal cortex? It's a bit of a mouthful. Ganapati, I'm going to ask you to launch this poll right now.
Yeah, the poll is on. Which one of these is a function of prefrontal cortex? Identification culprits, using logic, connecting past experience, and the D is seeing another person's perspective. The poll is on. You can answer. Yeah, good response. You're really interested in this subject. I could understand this. Really, Siddiq is really opening our brain. I thought it would get really very nice, and the accountant don't communicate very easily. For us, it's very eye opener for us. Yeah, so we are going to end this poll within 10 seconds. Good, I think good number of people are answering. Yeah, a few more is getting added. Nice. Yeah, I can understand some of you, those who are using the smartphone, you may not be able to answer in the poll. You can answer it in the chat. No problem. We will do that. Yeah. Yeah, the poll is over. Very nice. So with this, when we go through this, the result seems to be using logic is going to become the highest with the 90 participants gone into that. How do you think, Siddiq madam, about this?
Okay, that's very interesting. So yes, the prefrontal cortex does use logic, but what it does a lot better is actually empathy, seeing another person's perspective. Your neocortex, on the other hand, another part of the brain, is the part that is very good at using logic. So yeah, I can see why people would think that, because we said executive function, you need logic for that. But the logic part comes more under neocortex. People who said seeing another person's perspective, actually it's very, very close. Using logic is 90 and seeing another person's perspective, we have 85 people saying that. So yes, ability to see another person's perspective, that's essentially what, a prefrontal cortex can do. It can, preside over the rest of the brain, especially the limbic brain, and it can make those decisions. That's one more reason why it's called the executive function as well. Thank you. Thank you, Ganapati. Okay, so we've talked about the amygdala. We've talked about part of the limbic system. We've talked about the amygdala hijack, and we've talked about the prefrontal cortex, and we talked about the oxytocin. Now, what the prefrontal cortex does is it releases the oxytocin, right? It's responsible for hormones like oxytocin. It's responsible for hormones that make you feel good, like dopamine, right? All of this comes from the prefrontal cortex. So the prefrontal cortex is an executive function. It can override the amygdala, and it can bring in hormones that make you feel happier, that make you trust other people more, that make you able to see other people's perspectives. Right? Now, we spoke about all of this in connection with when we were in forests. Let's look at what's happening now. Right? So, one of my favorite authors, Maya Angelou, said, I've learned that people will forget what you said, that they will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Right? Another quote that comes to my mind at this time is, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And at this moment, I'm sorry, I can't remember who said that, but very similar quotes, because they show to us that essentially at the deepest core of our being, we really want to know that people care. And when we know that people care, when we are able to intuit that there is care, right, that there is a lack of judgment, we are able to form that trust, right? So what happens is, when it comes to conversation, the entire our brain, am I safe in this conversation? Okay, is this something that will be good for me? Am I being attacked over here? What's happening over here? So before we jump into that, Sakshi says, can I repeat that quote? Yeah, sure. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And like I said, I'm really sorry. I don't remember who said this. It's a beautiful quote. You can Google it and check who said it. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. You're welcome, Sakshi. Okay, and some of the questions I may miss while we're doing this, so please just keep your questions till the end, and Oh, that was Roosevelt? Okay, great. Thank you very much, Raghunathan. We've got the answer. This is crowdsourcing knowledge. All right. Okay. We're going to watch a video now, and you'll have to give me a second to share my video. But before I share the video, what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to just watch the video and identify what is happening in this conversation based on what we've been talking about until now, right? Okay, so what was happening in this conversation? Before we get into that, I know a couple of people.
Excuse me. Yeah,
Yes?
some of the chat has said they are not able to see the movie and video, and you can just share what is the movie name so that they're definitely able to view it as it will be available in the net.
Yeah. I will share the link to the YouTube clip in the chat box shortly. I have that. I will share that. So this is from from a movie. My brain is blanking out right now. It's from the movie. Just give me a second. It's called The Breakup, right? So I will share the link at the end of the session for sure. So question to the rest of you who could see the video and hear the audio, what was happening in the conversation? The couple were disappointed, okay? They were not meeting each other's expectations. Yes, there was blame. Yes, thank you, Mohammed, the breakup, yeah. They were not considering the feelings of loved ones. They were not thinking alike. Yep. There were misunderstandings. There was no empathy. Mohammed, I'm sorry about that. I will share the link. Yeah, quite a few people have said that. I'm sorry. I will share the link. I'm not sure what happened there. Most people, I think, could see it. Different points of view for different people. Yes. Married life, believe me, it can be better. Yes, Kaustav, I will forward the link. Okay. Yes, absolutely. So what is happening here? There's complaining, there's lack of understanding. Yeah, I love the comments that are coming up. They're fighting over responsibilities. They're not listening to what the other person is saying. Who said this? Esther, thank you. Fabulous. Yes, Mohammed, thank you. They're not listening to each other. Absolutely. They're fighting. There's no patience. Yes, and the feelings. I was complaining. Yes. Krishna says executive brain was totally off. Absolutely. So what is happening in this conversation, as you all can see very clearly, is there's so much of self-protection that's happening, right? There's so much of my needs are not being heard. I don't feel like I'm a valid part of this equation. That's what's happening. So when Jennifer Aniston says that, it's not about the flowers, it's not about this, it's not about that. She starts with flowers, but then she says it's not about the flowers. But she's not able to say what it's actually about, right? And he's not able to understand what it's actually about. So he's not listening. Because when we listen, when we look at what is it, what are this person's needs, we're able to learn a lot more. But we can do that when we engage our executive brain. But if both parties are trying to protect themselves, then it doesn't work. So in this conversation, you're seeing a lot of blaming. There's a lot of naming. There's a lot of shaming as well. You can leave your dirty socks around and all of that, So these kinds of ways of communicating, blaming someone, naming, giving names, you did this, you did that, blaming, and then saying you're stupid or you're this, you're that, shaming them doesn't get us anywhere, right? What it does instead is it triggers the amygdala. The amygdala, which used to earlier focus on keeping us physically safe, now focuses more on keeping us emotionally safe, right? So our brains, apparently it takes less than 0.7 seconds to know whether we are safe or not. So our brains are constantly, the amygdala is constantly trying to judge, am I safe here or not safe here? And the minute there may be a question that looks like, okay, I may not be safe over here, why didn't you think this? Couldn't you have, didn't it occur to you, that I've cooked this huge meal and I've done all this work and, couldn't you have brought me some flowers? Immediately, it's defensive mode. I'm trying to protect myself, right? So that's exactly what you're seeing over here. You're seeing two people having or attempting to have a conversation, and their amygdalas are triggered and they are at it. They're at each other's necks, right? And what this does is this leads to anger, this leads to worry, this leads to frustration, this leads to stress, and this leads to anxiety. Now, here's the interesting thing. You'll find in the fast-paced world that we live in, and our connections are becoming a lot more sort of over distances, and our connections are becoming a lot more about updates. I did this, I did that. Yep, great, fantastic. That's very often that's the level at which we are connecting with people. When we actually come into conversations with people, real conversations, and we get defensive, and there is an amygdala hijack, and the brain releases all of these hormones that actually cause anger and worry and frustration, it takes a long time for the brain to process that chemical and get it out of the system. So for someone who is in a workplace situation where you don't feel that people have your back, or you don't feel that people, you can trust them, and then you come home, and let's say, relationships at home may not be that great, you're feeling that way all the time. This level of stress, this low level of stress and worry and anger continues. And when it continues over a period of time, that's when it hurts us the most. The spikes are bad, the sudden spikes, like you see someone running in towards you all of a sudden, and you get a bit scared, right? Oh my God, why is this person running towards me? Sadly, that's what our city lives have come to. Or you're walking somewhere and someone's walking behind you, the example I gave earlier. That's a spike. But if you have the kind of life where you have this low level of anxiety and lack of trust and feeling unsafe, emotionally unsafe all the time, you will find that you are on edge a lot more, you get defensive a lot more. You'll see this even with children. So children who, I have two children, and you find that sometimes one of them is a type of child who ends up getting into trouble more often than the other. And so what happens is this sets up a really horrendous pattern. Let's say this child has gotten into trouble for doing something, say, 4 times. The 5th time something has happened, let's say something is spilled, what happens? The parent immediately says, "Did you do this?" Notice the tone of the question, notice the implication behind that, notice, the assumptions that are being made. What happens? The child becomes defensive. "No, I didn't do that. You're always yelling at me." Because very clearly what that is showing is that the amygdala has been triggered. The child is immediately becoming defensive and not engaging in, "No, I didn't do that," or "No, that wasn't me, it was an accident." None of those discussions come up. Basically, it's about self-protection at that time, right? Okay, sorry. So when the amygdala is triggered in a conversation, it's a no-go. It's essentially survival mode. However, what you really want to do in a conversation is bring in your prefrontal cortex, okay? So you choose what you would like to do that. Oh, okay. Sorry, that kind of threw me off a little bit over there. We'll get there. So what the amygdala does is it puts you in worry all the time. Here is an interesting little story, little piece of, story I want to tell you. This was research that I was involved in a long time ago. I would say about 10 years ago. So I was living in Australia at that time, and I was working in a university. And we were working with accounting students. So we were working with the students who were doing their masters in accounting. And a lot of these were international students. There were Australian students and there were international students as well. Here is the research that we did, and here is what we found. It was a huge research where we tracked, over 2 years, we tracked students who had moved from finishing their masters in accounting. They had moved on to taking up jobs and what had happened to them over time, right? What we found was really interesting. We also looked at others as well in the accounting field, but our primary focus was the students. What we found was that students who had completed their masters in accounting all started off with fairly good job prospects. They started off on a good footing. Students who had better communication skills got slightly better jobs. Okay, that was one of the first findings that we had. So good communication skills immediately ensured that it meant that you got a good job. But here is what was interesting. Over time, we looked at other studies as well that showed that over time, you may have come into an entry-level job based on your qualification, but your ability to go higher in your job to move into management depended entirely on your ability to have these conversations, depended entirely on your ability to communicate and connect with people. So your technical skills at one point stopped. They did matter. I'm not saying they didn't matter, but they didn't matter as much. beyond a certain level, it was more about your ability to relate to other people, your ability to communicate, your ability to connect, right? And so this, just before I was starting this session, I had actually forgotten about this research, but this came to my mind. And I just thought that I would mention it over here because it was a very interesting piece of research. It really showed what we can do, if we build those conversational and communication skills, what can happen. So here's a little activity. I'm going to put up. Sorry, I'm just trying to get back on track with the chat. Yeah, I'm going to put up a few sentences. Right? You tell me if this is a statement that comes from the amygdala, or if this is a statement that comes from the prefrontal cortex. All right? What would you like to do? Yep. What would you like to do? Prefrontal cortex. You're inviting someone, their opinion, their preference. Beautiful. Not the amygdala, the prefrontal cortex, because you're giving the other person the choice. Great. How could you do that? How could you do that? Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of amygdala coming up. Yes, absolutely. What does this question do? When you say, how could you do that? The only response you're going to get is a defensive one. The only response you're going to get is, well, what could I do? I don't know. I tried to do this. You'll see a lot of defensive mechanisms kicking in. You'll see explanations, justification, and that's defensive behavior, right? Why did you not do the dishes? Amygdala. This is a yes-no question, and it's a why question. I'm going to put on my coaching hat over here and tell you that almost always a why question is not a good question, okay? Remember, we are talking about, a conversation where you want to connect with a person. A why question immediately leads to defensiveness, immediately leads to self-protective behaviors, right? So why did you not do the dishes? You're going to get excuses. Or if there is enough trust built in, Stephen Covey called it emotional bank. If there's enough of trust built in and there's enough deposits that you have made into the emotional bank, then you will get, yeah, I couldn't do the dishes, I was busy with this, so I just thought I'd do it later. You get a low, a prefrontal cortex statement, but most of the time, a why question can actually lead to defensive behavior. I didn't expect you to do that. Yep, absolutely. That's the amygdala. Yes. Great. 4 is amygdala. Absolutely. Help me understand what happened here. Yes, this is the prefrontal cortex. Yes, yes. See, it's very similar to how could you do that, but it's asking it in a very different way. It's asking more from a question state, from a partnering position. Help me understand. I really want to see what happens. Now, there is a very important part in this that I'm not talking about. I will soon enough. All right. When we get there, I'll mention it. Why did you not think of doing that? Amygdala. Why question? Why did you not think of doing that? What stopped you from doing that? Yeah. Okay. How can we approach this in a way that helps both of us? 7, prefrontal cortex. Absolutely. Absolutely. Partnering. Right? Yeah. Why are you so lazy? Amygdala. Yes. Okay. I think people are getting this. Oops. What made you say that? What made you say that? Yeah. What made you say that can be prefrontal cortex. Yes. It's the prefrontal cortex because you're attempting to understand what is it that made you say that. Now, again, there's a very important part here that I'm not talking about. When we come to it, I will mention that, right? It appears to me that you're upset about that. What is making you upset? What is making you feel that way? Yes, it's the prefrontal cortex. because you're attempting to understand the other person. Great, nice, lovely. Okay, so our triggers today are emotional triggers. They are not physical triggers. Okay, sometimes we may have physical triggers, but most of the time they are emotional triggers. And so the amygdala is constantly working to protect you emotionally, no longer as much physically, right? Emotional safety is created and built every day through conversations. Now, a lot of this, the section that we saw until now is based on research that's been done. There's a book that I will provide a reference for later on. It's a wonderful woman. It's done by a wonderful woman called Judith Glaser, and it's a book called Conversational Intelligence. Okay, so what she talks about, she talks about a particular type of intelligence, which is conversational intelligence. So she talks about building that intelligence and maintaining that intelligence and actually flexing that intelligence to a large degree, right? So she says we create emotional safety for ourselves and for others every day through our conversations. We may not realize it, but when we are not aware, when we are not present in the moment, when we are not taking in the cues, we may end up creating moments of emotional, moments where people are not emotionally safe. They're not feeling emotionally safe, right? So she talks about the conversations that we have every day. Our conversations have the ability to make us connect or disconnect with people around us. They help us make or break relationships. Extremely powerful ways of connecting with people. So Mahesh wants to know if I can share the name of the book. It's there in the reference slide right at the end. I will share that at the end, right? Every time we have a conversation that has a positive association, we build and we flex our conversational intelligence, that muscle, all right? We rewire our brain and we rewire that relationship and we create a more positive world around us, right? And so feel-good conversations help us release oxytocin for ourselves and for the others. They release endorphins, they release dopamine. These are all hormones that help you feel happy, that make you feel happy and that make you feel safe. And what this does is this leads to partnering behaviors. Remember executive function. So you partner more, you connect more, you collaborate more, and this is how civilizations were built, right? Conversations that are aggressive or threatening. Why did you do that? How could you do that? What were you thinking? Oh, come on. These types, when you say it in this tone, when you say it in this way, when you use these words, all of this is threatening, it's aggressive, and it releases cortisol in the brain, and it releases adrenaline. And what it immediately does is it makes the other person create a barrier that stops them from opening up to the other person. So the focus there becomes protection rather than partnering. All right? There are a few questions around not being able to answer the poll questions. Don't worry about that. If you can just chat it, if you can answer the next poll question, that's fine. Or you can even put your response into the chat box if you're not able to see the poll questions. Okay. Let's move on that note to poll question 4. What stops the building of trust in relationships? Ganapati, I'm going to ask you to launch the poll. A, jumping to conclusions. B, not speaking your truth. C, blaming the other person. And D, all three given above.
Yeah, this question, it seems to be no-brainer and seems very easy. People have started answering. Oh, lovely response. Oh, I could see that. I could see. I can guess the answer, and people are just jumping into that answer very nicely. Wow. Wow, 207 is selecting one particular answer, which I thought that's going to become. Yeah, very nice, people. Yes. Interesting. Yeah. Very nice. We are going to close the poll in another 15 seconds. Yeah, almost 260 attendees has answered the question. I could understand those who are not able to answer it in the poll, no problem. Please answer it in the chat. We will consider this for the CPE purpose. Yeah, very nice. This seems to be very, very well, and 260 members has answered. And if we see, the majority of the answer goes to D. Yeah.
Okay.
Wow, this
Nice.
seems to be very, very nice. All of the above. I think everybody get into that. I think, Mr. Zilbig, I think you're really get into their brain. Your webinar. Yeah, very nice. How would you feel about this? Very nice. Yeah.
Fabulous. I think, absolutely spot on. I did throw in one over there that, I have not talked about until now, and I wanted to see what people thought about it, which was B, not speaking your truth. What I don't want people to take away from this or to misunderstand is that making people feel safe in a conversation means saying what they want to hear. No, not at all. There is a way you speak your truth, and you must speak your truth, because not speaking your truth means not having authenticity. And believe me, nothing else can lead to more breakdown of trust than not being authentic. If you come across as being fake, there will definitely be a breakdown in authenticity. Remember that the prefrontal cortex is also responsible for intuition. So when someone senses that you're being fake, that you're asking, you're wording statements in a particular way, but actually you have some other intention, it will not lead to a trust building conversation at all. Yes, integrity is extremely important. Thank you, Rajesh. Absolutely. All right. Thank you, everyone. Great responses. Let's move on. So how do we build trust through conversations? Okay, that brings us to that question. So we've seen the neuroscience aspect of it. Now we come to, possibly the more important aspect of how do you actually build trust through conversations, right? So essentially, in order to override the limbic brain, of which the amygdala is a part, we need to engage the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex also communicates to the limbic brain. It gives information to the limbic brain. And what it does is it actually gives this message from above. It has the ability to override the message that the amygdala is giving the rest of the brain. So the point here is engaging the prefrontal cortex. Let's look at how we can do that, okay? I'm going to share a video at this point. How do we engage the higher brain? I've got curiosity, focus, and choice. And oops, I'm sorry. And I will, we'll talk about that shortly. But before that, let's watch a video. And I'm hoping everybody will be able to see.
Yeah, it was a
Yes,
fantastic video. Fantastic video. Very nice. And yeah, please.
Thank you. All right. So what did you all see? What are some of the things that you saw in the video? Thank you, Pavani. Helping, yeah. And there's compassion, there's empathy, there's the joy of sharing, yes. There's curiousness, okay. Nice. Have a holistic view. There's gratitude, yep. Yep. Partnering. Thank you, Gautam. I love that. Yes. Partnering from Mirza. Thank you. Choice from Shomik. Yes. There's a change of thought process. That's cooperation. There's connection. Yeah, the master doesn't see the reason. Yes, that's right. Yeah, symbiotic relationship. Yes. Lovely. Fantastic. So, to the question, mutual understanding. Yep. Thank you. Lovely. So, to the question of what is it that we can do? How do we build trust in relationships? There are three things to remember. You can remember it by the acronym CFC, but CFC is not such a great thing to remember. You could. Essentially, it's curiosity, focus, and choice. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend the next possibly 20 minutes focusing on what these three things are and what I'm talking about over here. What I want to say at the outset here is, you're welcome, Nidhi. If you believe that, okay, now I know how the amygdala works and I know how the prefrontal cortex works, and so I'm going to focus on making sure that there is a healthy environment for a conversation that I'm having for the other person. Great, fantastic, right? But what I will tell you is the beauty of this whole thing is in what you can do to yourself. The beauty of this lies in actually looking at yourself first, all right? And I'll explain what I mean by that. So I'm going to start with curiosity here. When we look at curiosity, as I mentioned before, the first thing to look at is curiosity about self. We start off, when you want to engage the prefrontal cortex, you want to go into partnering conversations, you first need to start by knowing yourself, by looking at yourself. So start looking at what is it that you value. We all have very, very strong values, that we carry around us. I believe this is important, and hard work is a value for me, or honesty is a value for me. Often what happens is when somebody goes against that value, that becomes a trigger for us. And without realizing, we get triggered and we go into, a full-blown sort of aggressive stance. Why did you do this? How could you do this? Oh my God, I'm ashamed of you. You'll hear words like that. If, let's say, you believe honesty is really important and your child lies about something, what happens? We immediately get triggered and say, oh my God, how could you do that? I've told you so often that it's important to be honest. That is a value of yours, and somebody has gone against that value, and so that you've been triggered. So first, learn about yourself. What is it that I value? What are my triggers? Possibly a trigger could be an inability to say no to someone, and then the resentment that is built out of that, and then because of that resentment, the anger that comes out. That could be your trigger. So if there's only one thing that you will take away from today's session, then let it be this, that whatever you do, focus on yourself first. What is it that you are doing to contribute to this discussion? What are the ways in which you are bringing yourself into this situation, into this conversation? What is your agency? How is it that you can change and make a difference to this conversation, right? Those are the first ways things to look at. How can I approach this differently? Notice this is the first time I'm actually going outside. So first is, what is happening with me, myself? What is it that I value? What are my triggers? And there are many questions over here, all right? And at this point, I want to tell you that this entire section is entirely filled with questions. And there are two reasons for this. The reason number one is that I'm a coach, and so rather than tell you, you should do this, you should do that. This is, and I did that a little bit, but this is something that This is an approach that I believe is an extremely important way of living, which is just start by asking questions, right? Don't start with statements. Start with questions, and through that questioning, when the question is right for yourself, a whole lot of answers will emerge. Okay, I've got a comment on speaking the truth, saying what you really think. Yes, we will come to that. Sincerity, especially when you talk from your position and views on different issues. Yes, thank you, Tafsir, right. So from looking at ourselves inwardly, we then move into how can I approach this situation differently? How can I approach this conversation differently, right? So first, curiosity about self. What can I do differently? Then we come to curiosity about the other. In the video that you just saw, there's a lot of curiosity. The change happens when there's curiosity. The dog comes to the edge of the boat and the dog looks to see what that heron is doing. What's happening here? It starts with an open-ended question. What's happening here? Right? And that's really important. So what could the other person's perspective be? Remember, I'm not saying what is the other person's perspective. I'm saying what could be. Curiosity. Let me find out. Just telling yourself that, having the brain say that, what could it be? Let me find out. And not going into, I'm sure it's this. I know it's this. He always does this. She always does this. It has to be that. That's when we start digging into a particular position and, we go into those modes of self-preservation. Instead, what could it be, right? Simple question. What could they be feeling? Very, very important. And this question sounds like a really simple question, but the more you reflect on this, you'll find there are layers and layers and layers. What comes across as a particular feeling, when you go deeper, there's a lot more into it. It reminds me of a little cartoon that I read there used to be a magazine called Mad Magazine. I don't know how many people read it anymore, but I read it a lot when I was a child, when I was younger. There was a cartoon strip in that, and there's a teenager. She's gone out of the house, and it's getting late at night. She's supposed to come back by 9:30. She's not yet back, and the mother's really worried. The mother's fretting. Oh my God, what if she's been run over by a bus? What if what if this has happened? What if somebody's, taken her, kidnapped her, this, that? She's going through all this worry, right? And then the doorbell rings and the teenager comes in. And in the next little box, you see the mother yelling and screaming, "You are grounded for life. This is it. You're not going anywhere, young lady, blah, 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 blah." And the difference between those two emotions, there is worry. But how does that worry come out? That worry comes out as anger. So when you look at a person, you will see anger. You will see aggression. But what is below that? What could they be actually feeling? They're actually feeling fear. They're actually feeling worry. They're actually feeling care and concern that they're unable to express in the right way, right? So let that question rest in your head. Keep asking it. Even when you get an answer, keep asking that question. What are their needs? Like I said, what does this person need at the core of their being? Do they need to be to feel better about the situation right now? Do they need a little bit of reassurance? What could they need, right? And this question, what are their needs, if you guys want a reference, comes from this entire body of thought. It's absolutely beautiful if you want to look at it. It's called nonviolent communication. And it works really well when you want to really communicate at a very, very basic level and understanding what people's needs are. Called nonviolent communication, or NVC. There's tons of it available on YouTube. You can go and check it out, right? Finally, curiosity about the situation itself. What is the end I have in mind? This is what Stephen Covey talks about. Begin with the end in mind. When you're having an argument about, something really basic, what is it that I need? And then just think for a moment as to, what do I want for this relationship? What is the end result that I want over here? If you are annoyed with your child for, not studying, what is the end that situation that I want over here? I want to have a better relationship. I want to have better partnering. I want my child to be able to come and ask me, how do I do this? How do I do that? If you want to have a conversation with your team member, what is it that I want? I want my team member to become more independent. But if I want my team member to become more independent, it's not going to help if I say, how could you not think of this? That question is not going to get you to a state of independence. So begin with the end in mind. What do I want for this relationship? Logically, where do I want it? Where do I see it in the future? What resources does this situation need? This is a brilliant one. And when I say resources, I'm talking about from within yourself. What does this situation need from me? Does it need me to just be quiet a little bit and listen? Does it need me, which is always a good idea? Does it need me to be patient? Does it need me to, facilitate? What does this need? What can I bring out from within myself over here? And when you ask that question, the answer will come. All right. What positive things can this situation bring about? There's always, when you look, you will always find something positive. So have curiosity about self, curiosity about the other, and curiosity about the situation, right? Very, very important. So start with curiosity always. And then we come to focus. I love focus because it can really do magic and wonders. So I'm going to bring about a slight difference over here in focus on reality as opposed to imagination. Your brain can do a whole lot of things, okay? It can imagine there's a man following me. Your imagination will run, wild at that moment, thinking of all the things you've read in the news. Oh my God, this could happen, that could happen. This is what, maybe there's a gang waiting over there. Just your imagination is faster than the speed of light, okay? But there are moments when you need to stop your imagination and start focusing. How do you stop your imagination? You start focusing on reality, right? And let's look at what I mean by reality. So you start again with body. And as I said, start with yourself, your body. First of all, what is your breath doing? Remember, the amygdala hijacks your brain and your breathing goes out of whack. So one of the first things to do when you look at the brain, you have the brain stem here. The brain stem has an entire mechanism for regulating your breathing. So one of the first things to do is focus on what your breath is doing. And at that moment, just focusing on your breath, it can be a simple activity of just counting, count 4 when you're breathing in, count 4 when you're breathing out. As simple as that. You don't have to learn any fancy breathing techniques. You don't have to go to any class. Just something as simple as that. Essentially focusing on your breath and how is my breath going in? How is my breath coming out? The focus on the breath alone is more, it can work magic, right? Does any part of your body feel stiff, right? The amygdala does the hijack and you'll find your muscles are going stiff. So very often your shoulders become stiff. There may be different parts of your body that react that way. Just attempt to breathe into that part and loosen it. So take that time when somebody is talking to you, asking you these questions, taking those couple of seconds to just focus on your body, focusing on your breathing can make a big difference to how you bring yourself to that conversation. Then, starting with inside, we then move the camera from the outside. What is my body communicating? Am I sitting in a closed stance with my, my legs crossed, my arms are crossed, I'm looking away from the other person? What am I communicating? Take responsibility for that. Because through your body, you are communicating distrust, you are communicating protection, you are communicating, a lack of connection. Open your body up, consciously open your body up. Let the energy flow. Look at the other person. Try and see how you can bring softness into your eyes. When you focus on bringing softness into your gaze, you will find that your gaze becomes soft. It will be perceived as such because that's what your intent is. That's what you're intentionally putting out, right? What fears or then we move the camera to the other person. What fears or anxieties are you seeing in the other person's body language? Are they stressed? Is their brow arched? Are they looking really worried? Look at that, because that will tell you a lot about what the other person's feeling. We're going back to the curiosity bit, right? So focus on body. What is their voice telling you? Is their voice strained? Is it telling you that they're afraid? It can really, really make a huge difference when you're able to sense this person is not angry. This person is just upset. They don't know what to do. They're helpless. They're feeling fear. That's how empathy comes in, right? Then you focus on your heart, right? Very, very important, and it's really beautiful. You lean into feelings of loving kindness and forgiveness. Sometimes you can do this in different ways. Just looking at that person without labeling, just looking at them, and if you're feeling intensely like, oh my God, this person's so annoying, so irritating, just dropping those words of annoying, irritating, and just looking at them. And then going a step further and looking at, what could be some endearing qualities of this person. Something that was really sweet and nice that they did recently that you can remind yourself of. Something that they do really well. This may not be something they do well, but something that they do really well, right? When you bring all of that into focus, when you look at them and you look with an intent to forgive, you look with an intent of kindness, that will make a difference to that relationship. Breathe into your heart. When you're breathing in, one thing you can do is actually breathe into your heart. Feel like you're breathing into your heart and your heart is expanding. When your heart is expanding, you'll find that other parts of your body are actually relaxing. You'll find your eyes relaxing. You'll find your shoulders relaxing. And you'll find that, suddenly you're looking out and it's okay. It's fine. It'll be fine. It'll be better. Everything's fine. Nobody is out here trying to do anything to you. Instead, you can do things that impact this relationship positively, this conversation positively, right? Then consciously bring into focus the more endearing qualities of the person. We already talked about that. So focus on the person and what is nice about this person? What is fabulous about this person? What is this person capable of, right? Unlimited potential. Remember, and that helps you to avoid boxing that other person in, okay? And finally, focus on your mind. Don't believe everything you think. Don't believe every one of your thoughts. There's a beautiful thing called The Work by Byron Katie. It really helps because, when you look at that, you say, okay, we all take our thoughts very seriously. Don't take your thoughts that seriously. Okay, all right, this is a thought I had. Observe it. Hold it in your hand and observe it. Okay, maybe this is true, maybe it's not true. And what is true after all, right? So let's look at it for a minute. Suspend your imagination. I'm consciously going to not imagine the worst case scenario. I'm consciously going to stop imagining that. You could even go a step further and say, I'm going to imagine a best case scenario here, right? That's a choice you have. So all of this is about making those choices. Look for reasons you may be wrong. He did this because he wants to stop me from getting my promotion. Really? Okay, this is a thought I have. What is the environment telling me? Is this really true? Let me see if there's proof for the other opinion as well, that maybe he just did it because he's trying to look out for himself, or he didn't even realize that this is what the implication could be, possibly, right? Okay, and from focus, so we've looked at curiosity, we've looked at focus, and then we come to choice. When you're curious about a situation, you suspend your imagination, you focus on yourself and the reality, what is actually happening over here, and then you really pick up the last weapon, so to speak, and that is choice, all right? So there are only 5 things I'm going to talk about here, and here I'm actually telling you, I'm making suggestions, I'm offering this to you. Choice number 1, choose to listen deeply. So deeply meaning look at the being in front of you, have silence, just listen. Okay, you don't have to jump in with a response, because jumping in with a response means you're going to just immediately try and protect yourself. Listen, just listen, okay? Silence and listen. Questioning over telling. So instead of constantly telling the person, you should do this, you should do that. Why did you do this? Have a better way of questioning. Help me understand, right? Openness in body and mind. Focus on transparency and truth telling. So this is where we come to what I was talking about earlier. Speak your truth, but speak your truth with gentleness. Have the right tone. And this is what I meant when I said there's a big part of this that I'm not talking about. When you ask those questions, the tone makes a huge difference. Softness in tone, right? I can ask you a why question, but if I ask it really softly, and if we already have some level of trust, that'll be fine. Why? Why did you do this? Help me understand so I can make the situation better. And that makes a big difference. That's where trust builds. The softness of tone, the softness of intent, the intent to understand, the intent to connect, right? So tell your truth, but tell your truth with softness and tell your truth with fairness, tell your truth with transparency. And when you tell your truth, have the intent to understand as well and collaborate, right? Focus on shared success and positive intent. Choose to focus on that. Choose what would be good for me as well as for the other person. Yeah, sure, I have to send this report off tomorrow, and so I need you to work on this for the next 9 hours and skip your evening dinner as well as sleep. But what is a shared success over here? What do I want to, for this relationship to go? Where do I want it to go? And that will help me frame it much better, right? And finally, willingness to be influenced. This goes back to the focus thing where we said, maybe your opinion is wrong. And when you start with maybe I'm wrong, and when you hear the other person's truth, be willing to be influenced and say, okay, yeah, I see your perspective, and yeah, I understand what happened here. Be willing to say, yes, I can understand why you would think that way. I can understand why you would feel that way, right? So, listening deeply, questioning over telling with softness of tone, openness in body, mind, tone, focusing on shared success and positive intent and willingness to be influenced. These are ways in which you can choose to lean into your prefrontal cortex. All right. Which brings us to poll question number 5. Ganapati, I'm going to ask you to launch that poll. How do you engage the executive brain? By creating, facilitating, and copying. B, through exercising curiosity, focus, and choice. C, by complaining, filtering, and collating. And D, by focusing on that physical part of your brain. Which one is it?
Yeah, the poll is on. Nice question, actually. It's very relevant to what we have studied just now. Oh, nice. Thank you, Rajesh Mehta. Your answer is taken. The poll will be ending in another 15 seconds. Yeah, almost 254 members has answered the poll. Of course, some of them have answered in the Q&A and chat. That will be considered, not an issue. Yeah, it was very nice. I think almost everybody has answered. And as we expect, the majority out of 282, 202, and most of the chat and Q&A answer also, I can see B, 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 B. That means more than 95% of the answer goes to the B, all right? Almost, I think, 90%. That is simply very nice. So, majority has chosen the answer B. So, I think Siddiqui will accept these answers, what they have gone through so far.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Curiosity, focus, and choice. be curious about the situation, focus on the reality, and choose to have positive intent, choose softness, right? Great, fabulous. Which brings us to the end of our of my topic today. Essentially, we looked at, the amygdala, which does an amygdala hijack every time it senses a situation, and within 0.07 seconds, it says fear or, run or fight, fight or flight. And we looked at the prefrontal cortex, which is the executive brain or the executive functions. It can override the limbic system and the amygdala, and it can bring in a whole lot of empathy. And this makes a big difference to us now in conversations. How do we actually build trust? This leads to breakdown of trust when the amygdala does its hijack. So how do you engage the prefrontal cortex, and how do you build trust? And you can do this through focus, through curiosity, and through choice. So be curious, focus on the present moment, and choose to have positive intent and softness. So can you please show the curiosity slide once more? Yeah, I can do that. Yes. Okay. How to enhance prefrontal cortex? Essentially, the more you engage the prefrontal cortex by feeling empathy, by not responding in that moment, not letting the amygdala hijack, by doing all of what we were talking about, that's how the prefrontal cortex gets stronger. That's essentially flexing that muscle. Prayers or meditation. Meditation helps a lot because it regulates your breathing, and that breathing can actually help you when it comes to situations where you might get angry and your breathing goes out of whack. What it also does, there's a whole lot of work on the different types of waves. That's what meditation does. A different conversation. Feel free to connect with me on that. But meditation really helps a lot. Can we revive a pervasively destroyed relationship? Yes, Leonardo, you can. It takes time. You can definitely try. But remember that, a lot depends also on what has gone by in the history of that relationship. There are some things that are really hard to undo. There are some things that once those actions have been committed, it takes a lot of hard work to undo that, because it's the memory of it that you're undoing. And those kind of actions that form a huge imprint or impact on the brain come up immediately. And I mean, just to give an example here, that is what happens to people who might have gone through some sort of abuse in their childhood. It stops them from having closer relationships, because every time they attempt to do that, the trust building is basically weakened because of the memory of that abuse. You can definitely get over it, but you have to try. So I can say that the individual can try, but it depends on the dynamic. It is possible though, 100%. How does one stay calm when the other person is aggressive in tone of conversation? I would say look at, what is it that's making them aggressive. There is a beautiful, so Taoism has a beautiful image, and comes from Tai Chi as well. So when you have somebody who's pushing, all right, when that person pushes, you instead of attempting to stop that person from pushing you, you let the person push you, and you gently lead them into your direction. So you're using their energy to lead them into the direction you want them to go, rather than resisting that energy. So when someone's aggressive, let them speak. Let them, let that aggressiveness come out, and just ensure that you are constantly projecting a positive intent. At some point, they will sense that. Right?
Yeah, Siddiq, I'm just entering here. Some other Q&A, which we have just noted some interesting Q&A. Some other person who want to ask actually how they can become like you, like a good conversation person.
Okay.
How to become a good communication as like you? This is a question asked. Very interesting question. Would you like to give some tips?
Yeah, if you can help me understand when you say communication, what exactly are we talking about over here? So the communication that we were talking about was transformational conversations. Judith Glaser talks about 3 types of conversations, right? She talks about transactional conversations where I'm just asking you for something. Where's the book? Where did you put the book? Something like that. Then she talks about conversations where you want to influence, you want people to change their opinions. And then she talks about the third level, which is transformational conversations, where you're looking to collaborate and you're looking for a higher level. So if you help me understand, are we talking about communication from a language perspective? Are we talking about communication from influencing perspective? What is it that we're talking about?
Could be, I think, could be influential because could not. That's what I could feel from this person's question. Could be influence. How can they be?
So influence has a lot of different aspects in it. Number one is logic. You do need to be logical to be able to have a logical presentation of facts. You need to be able to have already built some of that trust. And very importantly, you need to be willing to be influenced yourself. What happens with leaders very often is, they want to influence their team members. I want to be an influential leader. Well, if you want to influence, be open to influence yourself first. Listen. They have different perspectives, accept some of those perspectives. Be open to those perspectives at the very least. And when that happens, when you have logic, when you've built connect, when there's enough of an emotional bank, you've made deposits, you've built that connect, that's when you'll be able to influence better, right? Again, we're not talking about influence from a social media perspective, different.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. One more interesting question. In the context of business, how do we use this CFC to understand the unmet needs of the customer?
So in the context of business, one of the first things I would say is, so Judith Glaser talks about something called priming, all right? And I'll just explain that a little bit. So priming in very simple ways is, in a very simple words is, don't go into a conversation when you have an agenda, don't go directly into that to that agenda in a conversation. So if you don't connect with your team member at all, ever, for anything, and then you want to have a collaborative conversation, it's not going to happen. Collaboration happens over time. Trust is built over time. So start off with your team members in business, with your peers, with your superiors, with curiosity. Find out about them. Ask about their lives. Yeah, look at what they're doing. Appreciate the work that they've put in. When you focus, you'll know, what is it that this person has done. Somebody may have a lot of difficulties at home and yet may have put in a whole lot of work while they're working from home. When you focus on that other person, you'll see what state they're in and you'll be able to appreciate that more, right? And choose to appreciate, choose to put the spotlight on that other person because that will come back. Approach it with a feeling of, with a mindset of abundance, right? Not that, there's limited amount of appreciation or promotions or goodwill, and if I put the spotlight on the other person, I will lose out. No, abundance. Create spotlights and create those wow moments for your team members, and believe me, that will come back to you. So when you're curious about your colleagues, when you focus on them, when you focus on the work they've done, when you choose to appreciate that work, when you choose to value them, you will find that your relationships will improve and you'll end up having better conversations.
Oh, nice. Actually, I also want to ask a question. One of Arshita asked, how to overcome overthinking, especially when we see or hear sad things. By overthinking, I feel the situation is happening in my life.
Okay, so I'm going to take this in the context of COVID-19. Overthinking. Oh my God, what if I go out and then I get it, and then if I get it, then my children will get it, my parents might get it, and then this might happen, that might happen. Overthinking. There's a very simple antidote to overthinking. Again, all of this you have to build the ability to do this over time. And I'm going to talk about Stephen Covey over here. Stephen Covey talks about focus on what you can influence. What is it that's in my, I'm going to use a different word over here, what's in my control over here? Can I keep my environment clean? Can I ensure that I'm indoors and I'm staying safe? Can I take the necessary precautions? Can I find ways to be happy, to engage my higher self, even when I'm not connecting with people, right? When I'm indoors. If I feel the need to connect with people, can I figure out ways in which I can do that will make me happy? All of this is in our control. Can I take this opportunity to focus on the relationships that are around me, people who are around me and people I'm in touch with? Can I focus on that right now and build that? So what is in my control? When we start focusing on what's in our circle of influence, it makes a big difference. So what is in my circle of control? What is in my circle of influence? I think I'm using the wrong expressions over here, but essentially, what can I make? What is in my control? If I am if I'm late for a meeting, right, and there is traffic jam, who do I blame? Or what do I blame? Do I blame the traffic jam, or do I take responsibility and say, hey, next time I will make sure that I leave on time? When we do that, when we shift the responsibility to within us, we start becoming feeling a lot more in control of what's happening in our lives. So overthinking, I think that's one way to handle the overthinking.
Yeah, good, very good. Thank you, Siddhi. There is two questions I would like to put it as one. How to manage a teenage children and how to speak with the old age people, how to manage. This was how do we deal the teenage people as well as how do we deal the old age people? That could be a very useful question for everybody in their life.
Yeah, this is a brilliant question for me as well, because I live in a family where I have elderly people in their 80s, and I have a teenager as well with me. And I have a 10-year-old who's more like a teenager. So I think with teenagers, it's important to remember that we think because they look bigger and older, we expect adult-like behaviors from them. We expect them to regulate their behaviors. We expect them to control their anger. We expect them to be able to communicate what it is that they want. I think it helps to remind ourselves that teenage brains are not fully formed. In fact, they're not fully formed until the age of 18 and 20. So a lot of the prefrontal cortex is not fully formed. A lot of their ability to think ahead. There's been some tremendous amount of research done in this. Teenagers find it difficult to actually plot out, if I do this, what will happen next? What will happen next? What will happen next? So when they're with their friends and one friend says, hey, let's, jump into that house at night and see what's happening. I'm just giving a random example here. Or let's, have a couple of beers and drive really fast. Teenagers find it difficult to think ahead and say, okay, I've had something to drink, and if I drive fast now, I may not have control, I may have an accident, and I may actually end up hurting somebody, myself or anyone else. They can't do that, right? So it helps to remember that. So sometimes with teenagers, I find these days that the best thing is to just listen, be present in that moment, put your gadgets away, put your cell phones away, and just listen. They don't need you to give them suggestions. They don't need your life advice. They need you to just partner with them. Just listen and say, oh, okay, wow. And always believe, look at their best. Believe that they are capable of anything. And when you believe that they're capable of anything and they sense that, they will achieve whatever it is they want to achieve. Elderly people is a big mind shift in the sense that, they're very different. Our fast-paced world, we talk quickly, finish this, do that. We constantly, I have this meeting, I have to jump into this. But the minute you come into contact with elderly people, it's very different. The pace just slows down. And I think that's something that might bother people. Again, the one thing that can help you out over there is just listening and being present in that moment. The conversation doesn't have to go anywhere. You don't have to agree with them. They may have strong views on, whatever it may be, politics, anything, and politics especially right now. You don't have to agree with them. Just being there and sharing that moment with them makes a big difference.
Thank you. Thank you, Siddiq. Before going to the final question, I would like to inform some of the questions we would have answered, some of the questions we have not answered because of lack of time. Anyway, I'm just sharing on our Chennai chapter's email ID, official email ID in the chat box now. Everybody note down and they can send the questions to that email. So we'll try to answer it as quick as possible. And the final question, there was one person asking, Khalid Shukwar. Whenever I start talking with my senior manager, I got confused and here beat goes up and start breathing heavily. And I'm not able to communicate effectively and not able to answer him. How do I overcome this problem?
Ganapati, thank you. I saw that question and I wanted to address it at that time, but I think, I couldn't. So beautiful. Yes, I did want to answer that question. There are two things you can do over here, Khalid. One is the breathing. Okay, the breathing really helps. Actually, three things. Okay, I'm going to talk about three things. The breathing really helps. It's fabulous. Second thing is this. There's a lady called Amy CPE. She has a TED talk and she's done a lot of work on body language. So I'll tell you very briefly what she talks about. Amy CPE talks about power poses. So she talks about this research that was done where people were divided into two groups, and one group was asked to put a pen in their, or a pencil in them, hold it between their teeth like this. And the other group didn't do anything. What the researchers did is they measured the happiness levels before the holding the pencil in the mouth and after. And they did this for 5 minutes for a week. What they found was the happiness levels of the group that kept the pencil in their mouth was much higher than the other group that didn't keep the pencil in their mouth. What happened there? So what they understood is when we are happy, we smile. Hey, I'm happy, I'm smiling. But if we smile, that makes the brain think we're happy and the brain becomes happy. Similarly, you may not feel confident enough to go and speak to your senior manager. But if you make poses, she calls them power poses. She says before a talk or before doing something like that, having a conversation like that, go into the bathroom and do these power poses, big, open your body out, like walk, with your chest held out and all of that. And that will make you believe that you are confident. It works in public speaking, all right? This is a trick that I use in public speaking, so try that out. And the third thing I'm going to tell you is visualization. Just breathe and imagine yourself walking into the room, knocking on the door. Imagine each and every detail. Opening the door, saying hi. How would you actually say it? What would the other person say? And say what you want to say calmly in your imagination, in your visualization rather. Visualize yourself saying this the way you want to say it. Do this 2 or 3 times. Believe me, it will change the way you're communicating. It won't change it immediately. It will happen little by little, but just try to do these things and hopefully they'll help you.
Oh, it was amazing answer. Actually, it was very useful. And you can show the reference slide, and there is a book you are referring earlier. If you can see the book name in the chat, that is useful for others.
Right here, Conversational Intelligence, How Great Leaders Build Trust and Get Extraordinary Results by Judith Glaser. Then the clip from the film The Breakup, I got that from YouTube and cropped it. There's another animated short film called Joy and Heron, done by a Chinese animation company called Passion Pictures. And there's also a great article on HBR called Calming Your Brain During Conflict. And there's a whole lot of other things that I read, which I keep reading. And I've referenced a lot of different things over here. Amy CPE, nonviolent communication, and a lot of other things as well. So,
yeah, thank you, Siddhi. It's wonderful. I would like to invite our Vice President, Prem Vasant, to give the thank you talk. Hi, Prem.
Hi, Ganapati.
Thank you. Hi, welcome, Prem.
Am I audible?
Yes, you're clear.
First of all, thank you all participants. My name is Prem Vasant, Vice President, Chennai Chapter. Thank you. Wonderful presentation. Number of members almost reached 300 participants. Really a nice crowd. We hope you got a good knowledge. And thank you, Siti. Really awesome and a thought-provoking session this evening. And it's very quite informative, and you gave us a couple of good ideas how to manage our conversations and how to build better relationships. Really wonderful session, and you involve the audience very nicely, and it's you're into the movement very really fantastic. And thank you, Mori. Thank you, Mori, for supporting the hosting this fantastic session. And really, your help is awesome to all IMA Chennai chapters.
You're welcome.
And thank you, IMA Chennai team, Akshaya, Paresh, Ramni, Srini, and helping to conduct this wonderful evening. And participants, you will get a certificate after 2-3 weeks. And please complete evaluation form. It will be pop-up after completion of this session. And if any feedback, send it to the community services at @IMANet.org. Watching to Ganapati to add his valuable comments.
Yeah. So we are going into the final poll question. Okay, this is the final poll question. I'm just opening the poll. The poll is, to what extent do you think you will use some of the strategies you learned here today? The poll open now. Please answer this. So this is also part of your CPE count. There are 6 poll questions. Those who have answered all the 6, definitely they'll be getting the 2 CPE credits. Of course, those who are answering Q&A or in the chat also will be considered. Yeah, lovely. Yeah, people are really. Thank you. Thank you. Nice. Nice. Yeah. Yeah, people are trying to talk very true. Yeah, nice to hear that. Actually, after hearing this, people are talking truth. I can see from the answer. Nobody want to say just bluffing or something. I can see from the answers very nicely. And the poll is going to end in a second. Yeah, very nice. Let's see the result. Yeah, the result is very nice. And if you see that people, the 35% is going to say, I am going to try it. See, people are very, very truthful. They didn't say, no, I got it this and all. Yeah, very nice. And people say immediately. Yeah, that's also very nice to hear that. It's very wonderful session. Yeah. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much. And first of all, I thank you very much, Siddhi, for your time and the wonderful information on really it's groomed up our community. It was really a wonderful session. Thanks a lot, and thank the IMA for the IMA Chennai has organized. This is all done with the complete team effort, which has been we are able to present it. I think Ori, even in the early morning, even in the midnight, used to come and really participate and do a lot of things for us. Really, we are proud to be part of IMA. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much.
Bye, everyone.
Goodbye.
Thank you, Ganapati. Thank you, everyone. Do feel free to connect with me at my email address or on LinkedIn. I'm there, Siddhi Jappi, or siddhijappi@gmail.com. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Anish.
Thank you, and goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, recording will be available on the website. Thank you for all the positive responses. Thank you for encouraging. Thank you. I'm ending the session. Thank you, participants. It's okay, Niti Ravindra. They will take care of that.
Next session. Understanding city to the call.